Late identified autistic and other neurodivergent adults often feel like they've spent their life on some other culture's stage, surrounded by actors playing out scenes that they all got scripts for but you didn't. And if you're anything like me, then you've got a lifetime of notes and research into the psychology of human relationships, why they go wrong and what you can do about it. And well, this book for me has been the central lens which has made a lot of things make sense. Hey friends, I'm Mike, a late identified autistic adult, and today we're talking about games. And no, not those games, the ones that we've been playing on our live streams, but games that you are playing every day and you probably aren't even aware of it. In this video, I'm going to give you a primer into transactional analysis and how it can help make sense of the world. And we'll go a little further and add some autism to the common games and see how that might change things up. I'll also be adding this video to the Tea and Tales Book Club playlist, and on next Tuesday's live stream I'll send this very book to one lucky viewer for free anywhere in the world. But if you'd like to order your own copy before then, I have affiliate links in the description below, which will auto-magically try and find you the best price on the book in your country, and there is a small kickback which helps keep my channel afloat. In my scenarios, if you're watching this and think Mike's talking about you, I'm not. Introduction to Transactional Analysis. Transactional analysis is a theory of psychology and communication developed by Eric Berne in the 1950s. At its core, TA suggests that we have a few different voices or modes in our heads that take the lead at different times in conversations. These he calls ego states, and they're represented like this. At the top is the P for parent ego state. This is the internalized voice of authority figures, like parents or teachers or society. It can be either nurturing or critical. When you're in your parent mode, you might be giving advice or telling someone off or offering comfort in a parental way. Your parent state will differ from everyone else's because different styles come from attitudes that you have copied or learned from caretakers in your life. When you hear something that your mum or dad might say, that's your parent ego state speaking. Does that make sense so far? Because the next one is the A for adult ego state, and being in the adult ego state is living in the here and now. It is your rational self. It processes information logically and without any emotional bias and responds directly to the reality of the situation. When you are in your adult ego state, you're calm, problem-solving, you ask straightforward questions, and you give straightforward answers. You listen without judgment. Think of your adult ego state as your clear thinking mind that isn't caught up in old tapes or ways you think you have to behave or big feelings. It's like a moderator state between parent and child. The child ego state is the repository of your feelings, your impulses, and your childhood experiences. It can manifest as playful and creative. Berne calls this the free child, or as adapted, that's submissive or rebellious. When you're in child mode, you might be reacting emotionally, feeling hurt, scared, joyful maybe, or angry, just as you did as a kid. It's the part of you that wants approval, that feels vulnerable or spontaneous. For example, if someone in authority raises their voice at you, you might suddenly feel and act like a scolded child. That's your child ego state taking over. In any interaction, you and the other person are communicating from one of your ego states to one of theirs. For instance, your school teacher could speak from parent. I expect you to do better on this report, directing this at your child ego state, which might leave you feeling small. Or a friend of yours might speak from their child ego state and go to you and say, "Oh, I'm so upset and overwhelmed." But maybe they'll direct it at your parent ego state, hoping for you to provide some parental style comfort to them, some nurturing. The healthiest communications tend to be adult to adult, where both parties respect each other as equals and respond calmly and objectively. But in real life, we often get crossed transactions, where one person's parent ego state will trigger another person's child, and vice versa. Their parent will say back to the other person's child, "Don't you talk to me like that," and so on. Let me give you an example of a cross transaction. Imagine a teenager comes home late and their parent says, "Where have you been? I've been worried sick." Parent to child. Instead of responding from the child state with an apology, "Sorry, mum," or an explanation, the teenager responds from their parent state with, "Oh, stop being so controlling and paranoid." This crosses the transaction. Parent speaks to child, but gets parent back instead of child, and that leads to conflict. When transactions get crossed like this, communication tends to break down. The original speaker, the parent in this case, will often escalate, leading to an even more intense parent-parent confrontation or shifting into a child state themselves. They might go, "Fine, see if I care what happens to you." A game is made up of one or more transactions and are often played subconsciously, but just as often they're played consciously as a manipulation technique. They do all end, but they end typically in one of three predictable ways. Firstly, someone gets hurt emotionally. Someone else gets to feel superior, or someone gets what they want by manipulation. In other words, games are like a dance where everyone knows the steps, except maybe the autistic person who hasn't been given the choreography. And I know this is YouTube, but this isn't actually a spectator sport. Here's a quick quiz, because you need this knowledge in place before we move on to talk about the game choreography and the rules themselves. Get ready to pause the video. I'm going to be asking you, what's a transaction? What is an ego state? And what is a game? It's really easy to see how being autistic makes interactions fall apart sometimes. Autistic people often find ourselves misreading or being mismatched in these transactions. I'm okay, you're okay. Before we move on, there's one more key concept from TA called life positions. Byrne described 4 basic life positions that people can hold down. This is deep down inside yourself. These are your beliefs. I'm okay, you're okay is the first one. This is the healthy stance. It comes about when you value yourself and you value the other person. I'm okay, you're not okay. This is the one-up position, which is I'm fine, but I look down on you. Then we have I'm not okay, but you're okay. This is the one-down position where you feel inferior and other people seem better or more capable than you. And we have I'm not okay, you're not okay. And this is the hopeless position. It's nihilistic, it's defeatist, it's just a pretty negative outlook on everyone. Now, the aim is to help everyone at any of these stages to move towards I'm okay, you're okay. For autistic folks, I think this is huge because many of us have unconsciously lived in the I'm not okay, but you are okay, constantly feeling flawed when we compare ourselves to neurotypical people. Or we might flip into the I'm okay, but you're not okay when we feel bitter or defensive after bad experiences. It might surprise you to hear that there is actually a subculture of the autistic community that believes those with Asperger's are an evolution of humanity and better than neurotypicals. It's the reversed attitude of that which prevails from society and appears sometimes amongst certain nerdy subcultures. I see you, and I will get to it at some point. But I think a better approach is to realise that we are okay inherently, as we are, and others can be okay too. It's the communication patterns, it's the games that are not okay, not us, right? Not our inherent worth. Keep this in mind as we talk about social games and how to navigate them. The goal is never to shame anyone, yourself or others, but to give you the tools to reach an adult ego state and I'm okay, you're okay type of interaction. The social games that people play, when Byrne talks about games, he's referring to are repetitive, dysfunctional social interactions that have hidden motives and predictable outcomes. Essentially, a game is like a scripted sequence of moves and counter moves between people, often involving unspoken rules. The content on the surface might seem normal, but there's an ulterior transaction or double message going on. At the end of the game, someone or both people usually end up feeling bad. And if you've ever thought, here we go again, why do I always end up in this argument or situation with that person? Chances are a psychological game is in play. They're not played for fun unless you're dealing with a particularly pathological behaviour. They are usually unconscious and serve a psychological purpose. Sometimes the purpose is as simple as getting attention, avoiding responsibility, venting anger, or reinforcing a worldview. For example, a person might unconsciously start a blame game because deep down they crave the reassurance that they themselves are blameless, or they provoke criticism because it validates their own feelings of feeling inadequate compared to other people. The key is that each game has a payoff, not a healthy reward, just a familiar emotional outcome that one or both players are psychologically hooked on. If you've ever had a toxic long-term relationship, you know exactly what I'm talking about here. Games are really common. Byrne suggests that games are the most common form of social interaction, more common than straight talk or genuine intimacy. Now, when I first read his book over 20 years ago, I thought that outlook was incredibly cynical of him. But think of how often people say things that they don't fully mean, or do a little manipulation dance in daily life. It could be polite office banter or family squabbles. They're all games. Neurotypical folks seem to learn these games implicitly, and they might find them obvious or second nature, but neurodivergent people might find them bewildering or exhausting. I've had to learn them explicitly over decades. Games have names and categories, and some of the names are really amusing. We've got, now I've got you, you son of a bitch. That's one of them. See what you made me do? That's another. Ain't it awful? Is another. Why don't you? Yes, but is another one. And these are all original game names. The games can involve 2 people or multiple people. You might have even heard of the drama triangle. This was coined by Stephen Cartman, who was a student of Byrne's. The roles of victim, persecutor, and rescuer might switch roles by the end of the game. A rescuer trying to help might become a persecutor once their advice is ignored. The victim who was originally complaining might turn into a persecutor by snapping at the helper. It's really messy. Think of a chaotic play where actors just keep swapping roles. Games are not the same as harmless social rituals or genuine conflict. Small talk or polite chit-chat, which has a social script, but doesn't have a hidden motive or a twist in the tale. Authentic conversations or even honest disagreements are not games if everyone is transparent and respectful. Games are categorized by insincerity, or a lack of full awareness, at least from one person. Someone will be operating with a concealed agenda or concealed feelings. Games can be stopped. Byrne's golden rule is that the winner of a game is one who drops the game first and returns to honest communication. Basically, whoever returns to the adult ego state first. In practical terms, if you notice a conversation is spiralling into weird territory, you win by refusing to play. Respond differently to the script, and often by speaking plainly and calmly, and that disrupts the pattern. But first, you have to be fully aware that you're in a game and not an unsuspecting player in someone else's. A lot of the time, by the time you realise that there's a game underfoot, it's just too late. You're 10 minutes into it. You're completely caught up in it now. And I think for autistic people, recognising these games can be incredibly validating. You might realise that no, you weren't being too sensitive. You weren't clueless. Perhaps the interaction was designed to confuse or one-up you. Do you remember when you first learned of the term gaslighting and suddenly you had a label to put a name on the insanity that you might have been witnessing? Think about how that felt and how empowering that was. And what if you feel like you're terrible at socialising? Maybe social interactions for you are genuinely illogical or contradictory. Other people around you might be playing a complicated game with rules that you haven't been taught. As an autistic adult, we often mean what we say and expect others to do so too, which can make these subtle games feel like an escape room with invisible clues. So if much of this sounds negative today, remember, insight is power. By naming the game, you gain the power to exit it or just to not take it personally. Game 1. Why don't you? Yes, but. The unsolvable problem. This is one of the most classic games that Byrne identified, and sometimes it's just called yes, but. It typically involves two roles. One person, let's call them the complainer, they present a problem or complain about a situation. The other person, let's call them the advisor, offers solutions. The twist is, for every solution suggested, the complainer responds, yes, but that won't work because... And this cycle repeats through multiple suggestions before eventually being battered down. Eventually the advisor gives up, feeling really frustrated and annoyed. Why do they even ask for help if they're just going to reject everything? And the complainer ends up sighing, see, nobody understands me, nobody can help me, my situation is just impossible. Both parties actually get something out of this. The complainer successfully keeps the focus on them and gains sympathy without having to change anything, and the advisor gets to feel helpful for a short while before it all sours. Autistic people often fall into the advisor role without even realizing it's a game. Because we love sharing knowledge and solving problems. I feel like the autistic neurotype tends to be general. We tend to be the troubleshooters. If a friend vents about an issue, our instinct might be to offer logical solutions right away. I mean, that is the adult ego trying to help. For instance, your friend at work says, I'm so stressed. I have no time to exercise. And you immediately might suggest, well, why don't you just get up a bit earlier and jog or work out at home? They then reply, yes, I thought about that, but I'm just too tired in the mornings. And you propose something else. Maybe try short workouts during lunch. And they go, yeah, but my boss often needs me during lunch. And you say again, all right, well, how about like at weekends, maybe? And then they say, but my family needs me at the weekends. And after a few rounds of this, you might feel confused or irritated. From the autistic perspective, you approach the conversation genuinely thinking that they wanted a solution. It can be bewildering. Why are they shooting down my helpful suggestions? In this video, all about the nail, there's a couple arguing. And one of them is arguing about a headache and pain. It transpires that they have a large nail embedded in their forehead. The other person keeps offering helpful suggestions like...
You do have a nail in your head.
It is not about the nail. And I'm not sleeping very well at all. And all my sweaters are snagged. I mean, all of them.
Have you tried removing the nail? And eventually they get shouted down from a tearful person with a nail in their head.
Ow!
Oh, come on, if you would just...
Don't!
In reality, that person just wanted to vent and receive empathy, not actual advice.
That sounds really hard.
It is.
And this mismatch is so common, it is basically my entire life. Autistic people often communicate literally and assume that others would do so too. If somebody presents a problem, we assume that they want a solution because that's what we would want. I mean, that's true for me, right? Is it true for you too? And we may miss the hidden social cue that the other person is actually playing a game of yes but, meaning that they're seeking validation more than answers. And the end result here is that the autistic person in the advisor role comes off as pushy or a know-it-all, and the complainer friend just feels unheard because all they wanted was a comforting word or two. On the flip side, autistics can also find ourselves in the complainer role of this game if we have been conditioned not to directly ask for emotional support. We might present a problem hoping someone will say, I hear you, but instead well-meaning people just keep giving advice. So we might yes but them because we already thought of those ideas, or they just seem unfeasible to us. The sad irony is both parties are trying to connect, but they just talking past each other's needs. Imagine an autistic woman, we'll call her Sarah, in a late diagnosis support group, if such things existed. We'll go with it. And she says, I feel lonely on weekends. And several group members jump in with advice. Why don't you join a club or meetups? Yeah, but I get overwhelmed in big groups. Why not invite one friend over? Yes, but most of my friends are busy or have families. Have you tried online communities? Yes, but I really want in-person communication. And then basically everyone gets stumped. And Sarah just deflates, thinking they don't understand how hard this is. And here, Sarah genuinely wasn't playing a game consciously. She's not being an asshole. She's voicing a real struggle. But it inadvertently slides into a yes but pattern because she's feeling unheard. The others were in pragmatic fix-it mode, so adult or parent ego states, while Sarah was expressing an emotional need as a child seeking empathy. The social dynamic becomes a minigame, like advice ping pong that goes nowhere, leaving everyone frustrated. How to exit? If you recognise this pattern, the best tool is to switch to adult ego state and just name what's happening very gently. If you're the one giving advice and you keep getting yes but, rebuffed responses, pause and shift approach. You could say with a kind tone something like, hey, I'm noticing that none of these ideas feel like they would work for you. It sounds like you might just be really frustrated and needing a break. This kind of response validates the feeling instead of pressing on with solutions. Often that's exactly what the other person needs, to be heard and not fixed. In transactional analysis terms, you've just stepped out of the rescuer role and into adult, involving the other to move into the adult too, or at least an honest child expressing what they really need. Alternatively, you can ask a direct question. What do you think might help? Or maybe, are you wanting my advice or just to sit together? I'm okay either way. I just want to be sure I'm responding to something that you need. And this kind of meta communication can sometimes break the cycle. Although really, really hardcore yes but players will deny that they're doing it. So if that happens to you, please don't take it personally. If you're the one who needs empathy but keep just getting advice thrown at you, try switching to adult and stating your need. Like, I appreciate the suggestions. Honestly, I've thought of a lot of these and I am still stuck. I think I'm just really looking for a listening ear right now. And it can be really vulnerable to state your feelings so clearly, but you might need to do that to guide your friend rather than just fighting with them and just sort of hoping that they can read your mind. And over time, if you learn this one game, you'll start to not only notice it, but other games too, and that's kind of why I mentioned it first. You'll save yourself a ton of energy. Instead of pouring all of your limited spoon battery energy into a black hole and then feeling underappreciated or confused, you will learn first to identify what the other person is looking for. Many neurotypicals engage in problem talk like this as a form of bonding, not seeking answers, and I think it's okay. It's okay to play along a little bit, as long as you know it's a social ritual. Think of it as an emotional support exchange rather than a literal request. This realization can flip a more frustrating interaction into a more tolerable one. You might still find it illogical, but at least you know what's expected. And if it's too draining, you can politely excuse yourself. Personally, I set a personal limit here of like 3 suggestions max before ending the game, asking if they're okay, making tea for them, that sort of thing. Does that make sense? Game 2. Ain't it awful? Misery loves company. Let's talk about a group game. And this one's called Ain't It Awful. And it's, at least in the British Isles, probably the most common game that you'll see in British workplaces, family gatherings, and, well, I don't know, anywhere people cluster. And the theme is basically, let's bond over how awful something or someone is. It's a cousin of complaining games, but it's more of a social pastime where everyone takes turns lamenting or outraging over some external issue. Have you ever heard your co-workers at lunchtime griping about management's incompetence, each trying to one-up each other with another story of absurd bureaucracy? Or you must have had the experience of family members just dissing kids these days, or that one aunt who never brings a dish to potluck suppers. Not that one. There's a feeling of camaraderie in collectively saying, ain't it awful, about someone or something. The game starts when somebody attempts to inject a positive note or a solution. And now that person often gets subtly or overtly shut down because it threatens to end the gripe fest. This sounds absurd, And you might need to rewind this video like a minute or two and re-listen, now knowing the context of transactional analysis. But it happens all the time. The unspoken rule here is we're not actually fixing anything or showing empathy for the target of complaints. We're just reinforcing that we're all on the same side and above those fools. If you don't participate, you might be seen as an outsider or not getting it. And therein is the primary reason for my entire schoolwork history, family dinner history, you name it, all being far more difficult than it needed to be. Because I used to think at first, what the fuck is going on? And later, right, it's not about the nail. It's about some monkey level group dynamics, and I've just painted myself as an outsider in the same way that if I'd painted my own face yellow. As autistic people, we tend to be solution or sincerity focused, so sitting around complaining for complaining's sake can feel pointless or toxic. You might chime in with, I don't know, well, maybe management is under a lot of pressure, so maybe that's why our deadlines are so strict. You might expect to have a reasoned discussion, and suddenly you're getting cold stares as if you betrayed the group or, I don't know, farted in an elevator. You broke a rule. We are here to unanimously bash, not empathise or explain. Alternatively, if you have offered a solution like taking the complaint to the boss and sorting it out, you'll really kill the mood. The purpose is to bond over a problem, okay? Not fix it. It's almost a social kind of play acting where everyone takes a turn being dramatically put on and everyone else will then validate them. Neurotypicals might consider it harmless venting, but for autistic people, it can be really baffling and draining. On the other hand, autistics can actually play this game too. Even me, when I've said something like, the neurotypicals are not okay. And the key is mutual understanding that we're just sharing feelings, not looking for answers. Where it gets problematic is if it becomes a perpetual negativity loop that just brings everyone's mood down. The hidden payoff, of course, is social inclusion and validation. It's like a negative bonding ritual. Each person gets to feel, I'm not the only one who feels this way. In moderation, I think this is fine, actually. It's cathartic. But if it means that other people start feeling excluded or frustrated, you gotta step out. If you're involved in a ain't it awful circle and it's draining you, you could do a bit of tactical participating. So, gripe about something small but genuine. Don't lie. Just go low stakes. Something like, yeah, those new forms are a pain. I spent 10 minutes instead of 2. Just show them that you're on the team, so to speak. And then you can maybe try and attempt to steer the conversation to something else that's inane than neurotypicals like the weekend or the weather or something. Of course, if you don't have the energy for that, you could, remember the adult ego state, focus on saying something like, hey guys, I know we are all annoyed about this. I am too. I just get overwhelmed when we focus on it for too long. Mind if we switch topics? Your mileage may vary, but remember that return to the adult ego state is often the best exit. A decent group will respect that and maybe move on, but if you do it too often, it's probably going to come across as your controlling parent ego state policing the adapted child venting of the group. Even if you just know that's not what the group are playing, you might not take any negativity personally or feel compelled to find a solution that isn't yours to fix or anything like that. It's okay to join in moderation if it serves your social needs and you're aware that's what game is being played. But it's also okay to bow out if it isn't. By staying in an adult mindset, you can make a conscious, intentional choice rather than feel like you're just drowning in what the hell is going on. You might think, we're playing misery poker again. I'll ante one up, small gripe, and then I'll fold. You know what I mean? Once you see it for what it is, all the stress is gone. Game 3 is, now I've got you, you son of a bitch. And yes, that's what Bernie called it. It can be really subtle. Basically, the game involves one player biding their time until another person slips up so that they can be pounced on. Gotcha. In drama triangle terms, the persecutor is the one who initiates the game because they usually harbour some resentment and they wait for the chance to watch then target and catch them in some mistake or wrongdoing. When it happens, they overreact. They scold, shame, and humiliate the other person, deriving satisfaction from finally having the upper hand. It's like they've been keeping score of some imaginary points, and once they reach a threshold, they get to cash them in for some psychological prizes. The classic example is that of a spouse that quietly endures lots of minor irritations until one day, say their partner forgets to pick up milk at the shops, then boom, you never remember anything, I've had it with your irresponsibility, and they just unload way more anger than the situation seems to warrant. Or in a workplace, maybe a colleague who's been jealous finds that you make a small error and then they immediately CC the boss in and point it out in some sort of dramatic fashion. You see, with this game, a key feature is the glee or vindication that the catcher gets from catching the offender. The caught person, which is now in a victim role, often feels bewildered, blindsided, disproportionately guilty maybe, or shamed. Of all of the classic games in Byrne's book, I wanted to talk about this one because autistic people are so often on the receiving end of this game, unfortunately. We might be targeted because we're perceived as different or socially below someone in hierarchy, making us easy marks for a power play. Also, autistics try, usually, to follow rules and do things correctly, often to avoid exactly such conflict. But given the extra challenges we have, maybe our executive functioning wasn't functioning that day, or sensory issues, or simply missing an unwritten social rule, we might just slip up in some minor way. And when we do, someone with a "now I've got you, you son of a bitch" mentality can swoop in. For example, an autistic student in a group project might miss a subtle instruction due to auditory processing issues. A classmate who's already prejudiced, I already always have to carry this team, I've already told them this, that, and the other. They'll jump at the chance to publicly say, "See, you didn't do the thing like you were supposed to. Thanks, we might fail now, great job," and all that sort of stuff. The autistic student will be mortified, maybe didn't even know they messed up until that moment. Autistic people often abide by explicit rules that can unintentionally break social norms, like maybe not realising something said was offensive or not picking up on office politics. A colleague might store up resentment over time. "She always corrects my grammar, who does she think she is?" But then wait for the moment that the autistic person makes a similar mistake, and then they'll be really gleeful and they'll point it out for everyone to see. It's a gotcha that often feels like a betrayal because you might have thought things were fine until, bam, they come down on you. And it can trigger trauma responses if you have a history of bullying or public shaming or anything. It's worth noting that autistic people can inadvertently play the initiator of this game too, but I don't think typically out of a sense of malice, but out of a strict sense of justice or rule following that gets broken. And a lot of autistic folks will get quite offended with that. If you see someone break a rule that you yourself have been diligently following, maybe a co-worker slipping out early when everyone's told to stay late, you might call it out. But that co-worker will experience it as an escalation, as a gotcha, and they'll resent you for it. If your motivation has a bit of satisfaction at catching someone, you need to check if you're sliding into this game. In a more personal context, consider an autistic husband. Let's call him Ben, who always tries hard to remember his neurotypical wife's requests. The wife, however, has been upset that Ben often forgets emotional nuances, like not noticing that she was sad last week. Instead of addressing that directly, she unconsciously waits. One day, Ben does forget something concrete, picking up the dry cleaning, whatever, and the wife explodes and says, "Unbelievable! Now I've really had it. You don't listen at all. You forget everything. Do you even care about me?" She might even bring up a laundry list of past misses. Ben would be shocked at the intensity. Dry cleaning was minor, he thought. Maybe at this point, he goes into shutdown while she rants. And here, the wife got to release all of her pent-up feelings and make Ben feel guilty. And payoff for her might be a sense of righteous victimhood or finally scoring a point. And Ben's left feeling like, I'm a failure and just afraid of the next trap and hypervigilant for it. How to exit or cope, then. If you detect someone in your life has that scorekeeping vibe, that they rarely give feedback until they can do it in a dramatic fashion, maybe they enjoy public criticism, or you often sense that they're waiting for you to fail, it's a sign of a really unhealthy dynamic. Try not to take the bait of escalating. Try. You won't know that it's happening until after the escalation has started. That's the problem here. But when someone springs a gotcha on you, your child ego state might feel ashamed, or your parent ego state might want to fight back. Oh, so you're so perfect? Either reaction fuels the game. It prolongs the conflict, and worse, it gives the instigator much more ammo. If possible, respond calmly and factually. You're right. I did forget to send that email. I apologise. I'll do it right now. Keep it short, not too many words. This can diffuse the immediate attack because you're not playing out your scripted role of defensive child or sparring partner. It's like stepping out of the duel. They may be surprised when you don't either grovel excessively or lash back. Those are the two expected responses to this game. A straightforward acknowledgement in adult tone often holds the momentum. Just remind yourself that even if you did slip up, it doesn't justify their overreaction. If the other person continues to berate you, even after you've acknowledged your mistake, it's fair to set a boundary. Adult mode boundary setting might sound like... here we go, off the top of my head. I understand that you're upset. I've said I'm sorry and I'm fixing it. I don't think that continuing to yell is helping. Can we discuss this calmly? If they refuse, removing yourself is an option. Like, let's take a break and talk about this later. And walk away or mute the chat, put your phone in airplane mode, whatever it is. In this case, it might actually enrage them further in the moment because the game isn't progressing as they wanted, but it protects you. Some people will play this game because they know that you hate conflict and will just take it. Breaking that expectation is empowering. If it's a partner or family member or co-worker that you have to deal with regularly, addressing the pattern can be helpful to reset boundaries. You could say, hey, I notice that when I make a mistake, you get very angry with me and bring up past issues. I want to work on things, but I need to be talked to respectfully. If I screw up, I'll do my best to fix it. I appreciate it next time if you just let me know calmly what is wrong. Sounds good, right? But not all gotcha players will respond well to this. Some will deny it or gaslight it, suggesting that you're exaggerating. Use careful judgment. If it's a boss or a family member with power over you, you might need a very tactful approach. If they genuinely care, I think this might prompt them to reflect. If you notice yourself feeling a secret satisfaction, though, at catching someone else's mistake, check in with yourself, your own motivations. It could be a sign that you have unspoken resentment. Rather than wait for a gotcha scenario to bring it up, consider what's bothering you more directly. In adult ego. For example, if a colleague's behaviour irritates you, talk about that behaviour when it happens. You could say something like, hey, I noticed that you often leave early. I feel a bit swamped covering the late tasks alone. Could we find a fair way to handle workload? This hopefully avoids you storing up anger for later. As autistic people, fairness is massive for a lot of us, but we must ensure that our quest for fairness doesn't turn into punitive movements. Address things in the moment if possible, and with curiosity rather than accusation. The gotcha game is best disarmed by not playing the victim or the counter-attacker. I know it's easier said than done. If you only realise that you're in the game when it's already heated, you might not be able to respond. You could be very stressed. Shut down or meltdown later maybe, so go gentle with yourself. Over time though, particularly with the now I've got you game, spotting the patterns can help reduce their power. You're probably going to end up a little bit like me with a wry and a monologue that says things like, I see Carol from accounting is laying a trap, expecting me to screw up so that she can pounce. Well, Carol, challenge accepted. I'll double check it. And if I make a mistake, I'll own it quickly and not give her extra fuel. It almost becomes a strategic game in your mind, which can help replace feelings of helplessness with a sense of agency. Coping tools and exit strategies. There are a lot more games than this described in Byrne's book. And some of the examples are dated. They come from the 1950s. And I've spotted quite a few more of my own, and I'm tempted to make at least one more follow-up video to this one to break apart what other games have experienced. Maybe on YouTube or maybe for my patrons on Patreon. And once you get familiar with the games, you've got names to them and you know how they work, and you literally watch it like you're watching a documentary unfold, it's almost like the playing field gets leveled a bit. I've spent most of my life literally bewildered, and now it's interesting to spot the games that people play, even if they're not aware that they're playing them. I don't have so many distressed emotional reactions these days, or spend what feels like all of my energy on playing and maintaining these transactions with people. Mostly because I've been training myself to spot these games and understand the disconnection between what's said and what's meant for most of my adult life, but only through an autistic lens for the last few years. And it's something that feels like a complicated foreign language that neurotypicals are native speakers of. I feel like, hey, I can get by now, I can understand what you're saying. But I think it's important for autistic and neurodivergent people to be aware. Just like the awareness of gaslighting, when you give a label to behaviours or personalities like narcissists or manipulators, just knowing, as is said, really is half the battle. The journey of analysing social games and practising new responses isn't just about skill building. It's actually about healing and empowerment. For many autistic adults, social interactions have been a source of trauma, years of not understanding why things go awry, of feeling like every conversation is a potential minefield, of facing rejection or ridicule for reasons that you can't pinpoint. Learning about transactional analysis and social games should not be about blaming yourself for not having known the rules earlier. Rather, it's a testament to how resourceful and resilient you, watching this video, have been for getting this far. Knowing how something was off, but seeking answers, and that's huge. If you're just realising what you thought were personal failures was actually you playing a rigged game, it's okay to feel grief and maybe even anger about that. If you've identified a particular person who always manipulates or criticises you and you feel angry towards people who frequently play games with you, this is valid too. Try to channel your energy constructively, maybe into setting a boundary or having that long-needed talk. If direct confrontation isn't safe or worth it, channel your energy into resolving to change your own participation in these games. After games, what in the book? Burns says, the somber picture presented in parts 1 and 2 of this book, in which human life is mainly a process of filling in time until the arrival of death or Santa Claus, with very little choice, if any, of what kind of business one is going to transact during the long wait, is commonplace but not the final answer. For certain fortunate people, there is something that transcends all classifications of behaviour, and that is awareness. Something which rises above the programming of the past, and that is spontaneity. And something that is more rewarding than games, and that is intimacy. But all three of these may be frightening or even perilous to the unprepared. Perhaps they're better off as they are, seeking their solutions in popular techniques of social action. This may mean there is no hope for the human race, but there is hope for individual members of it. If you'd like, what an ending. If you'd like me to cover more games in a future video or videos, do please let me know. Your comments and your thoughts on the sort of content you want to see from me does influence the sort of stuff that I make, so I am listening. Please let me know. I'm thinking of deep diving a few more of these particular games on Patreon, not just from the book, but also from my experience. Speaking of Patreon, if you want to support me to make this content, and you'd like to join my exclusive Discord community, members-only live streams, watch more AF content in your life, then there are 3 tiers you can choose from, and you can pause and cancel or change your tiers at any time. In fact, Patreon now means that I'm able to invest much more time and money into making YouTube content. I'm currently working on a video that's taken me 5 months so far, and I hope it's the best piece of work that I could make on the subject of ABA, or Applied Behaviour Analysis. It's coming this summer, as soon as I can get it done. A link to this book is in the description below. And next Tuesday's live stream will explore these and other social games, and I will send this book, this actual book, to one lucky viewer of the stream on the day anywhere in the world, and I've posted books all over the world so far. They're all priceless after they've been signed by the cats. And in the meantime, I'll see some of you on the Scratching Post Discord to talk about social games and how to break them. And every like that this video gets means that one extra cat treat gets dispensed to the 15 kiddies. And lastly, please watch this video next. It's the one that YouTube thinks you'll enjoy the most. And I think you'll enjoy it too. Bye!